Welcome to the Forward Marketing Podcast, the podcast that covers internet marketing strategies and leadership tactics to move your business forward. With your host, Joshua Jarvis. Hey, and welcome back to the Forward Marketing Podcast. I am your host, Joshua Jarvis, and that is Forward, the number 4, RD Marketing. And I would love it if you just take a moment and leave me a review on iTunes. It's been a while since I've seen a new one, so I could really use the help there, especially if you like this podcast. So today's episode, we've got talk about Google Tag Manager. And I know some of you are wondering, you're like, Google Tag Manager, that doesn't sound like marketing. And it is. It is actually something that you can definitely add to your marketing tool belt. Other people may be saying, Google Tag Manager, isn't that something that nerds use? I don't know what to do with it. And I was one of those people, so that's why I'm saying this. I thought that Google Tag Manager was definitely way over my head. I watched a few videos on it and realized it's actually pretty easy. And I thought, once you know everything there is to know, which I don't know everything there is to know, so I shouldn't say that. Once you know the basics, that's what I should say, of Google Tag Manager, then it really helps you sort of understand how to use it, and then you can take it to another level if you want. But it makes a lot of things really easy, and I think I thought it was really useful to sort of share with the listeners of the show. So Google Tag Manager, what is it? And why, and so we're going to go into it. This is going to be, if you are a Google Tag Manager super advanced person, this may be a little bit boring for you, maybe like a review. But for everyone else that has very little experience with Google Tag Manager, this will be a good overview. At the very least, you'll be able to talk about it somewhat intelligently, maybe. Maybe I shouldn't oversell it. So let's start with what it is. And so really, it's just a little piece of code. So in order to use Google Tag Manager, if you've ever put any code on your website, like Google Analytics or Hotjar or Clicky or any of these things where you have to copy and paste a Facebook pixel, where you have to copy and paste a code into the head of your website, if you've ever had to do that, then that's as easy as it is. In fact, if you have a WordPress site, they have plugins for you to use to install it, if that's what you want to do. So it's pretty easy to use. And really, I don't know that Google's manual says this, but I really think Google Tag Manager was made for sort of non-coders. And why I say that is that its design is something I can insert into a client's website, and I can add almost anything I want to in the header now, but without having to go through the development department. And if you remember last week's episode, I sort of revealed some personal stuff going on in my life that I am now the SEO director of an agency here in Atlanta versus just sort of being on my own. And some of the clients that we have are bigger, and they don't want me sort of just monkeying around in their website. And so now I understand why something like Google Tag Manager is really helpful, because I can do really things that, like, Google Search Console verifications are so much easier, or maybe I should say Bing, or inserting a Facebook pixel are so much easier now than they would have been. It's so much easier now with the Google Tag Manager than they were before I knew about this, because I had to go through layers of bureaucracy and approval. So basically all it does is sort of creates a window, if you will, into the header of your website. And so that's basically what it is. And I think there's a confusion out there between Google Tag Manager and Analytics. They are separate tools. And the difference is a Google Tag Manager is, like I said, it's kind of like a window to and a controller, if you will, that you can insert into your website, whereas Analytics is just analytics. So the difference really becomes where Google Tag Manager can tell Google Analytics what to do and when to do it. Analytics is just analytics. So big thing is though, you don't want to have sort of install twice. So you don't want to just install Google Analytics, install Google Tag Manager, and then try to tell Google Tag Manager to use Analytics. And that'll become more important if you decide to install it. What I'd recommend is you install the Tag Manager and then install Analytics through the Tag Manager, so that way you only have one installation of that. So, but the big difference is, I mean, they're separate products, so they're not what you think. Are they not duplicate and one's not more advanced? I actually thought that in the beginning, that Google Tag Manager was just the advanced version of Analytics, and that's not true either, because Google Tag Manager can do a bunch of other things. So, and let's say that you wanted to set it up, and you go to the page to set it up. You're going to say, well, tags. So a tag is kind of like you're telling Google Tag Manager what you want to do. And so you can do really basic tags to very complex tags, but you're telling it what you want to do. So like you could do, a tag might be something really simple, like I want you to install this Facebook pixel for me. I want you to run Google Analytics for me. It could be very, very simple. It could also be very complex. It could be tied to user interactions that are going on the website. So I'm not going to cover any of those because, one, this is a really poor medium to try to describe some of the cool things that you can do with Google Tag Manager. And also, I don't really think that's appropriate for the audience. I think this is really, if you're a small business owner or somebody and you're just wanting to get to me, this is really what it's useful for. So Google Tag Manager, in a nutshell, is really useful for that business owner that says, I don't understand, I don't know how to install these things. And Google Tag Manager then becomes the go-to place for you to install all your little pixels for everything, all the different things that you need there. It's also some place for the business owners, maybe the medium-sized business owners or the big business owners, to allow their marketing department to install things like schema on their website without having to give access to the website or have to go through developers to do it. And so we're going to talk about a few of those things. But so a tag is just basically telling Google Tag Manager what to do. The triggers. So there's two main components of Google Tag Manager. There's sort of tags and triggers, and there's variables. But tags and triggers. So tags are telling Google what to do. Triggers are telling it when to do it. So, and a good example is that when someone loads the page, so the page loads, I want you to record a page view in Google Analytics. Another thing you could do is when a user scrolls down the page, I want you to record every certain percentage of that scroll. So you could get into that kind of detail, and that's really useful in a situation where maybe you have a landing page and maybe the call to action is below the fold. Maybe it's at the bottom. There used to be back, I don't know how many years ago, there was this long form sales copy that was really popular. And you had to scroll down, and then at the very bottom you'd see the sales pitch. And it was, all these letters and testimonials and videos and everything else, but you never saw the price. And you didn't see the sales pitch until the bottom. And so had Google Tag, I think this was well before Google Tag Manager ever came out, but had it come out, you would see where people would give up. And so if you tracked the scroll percentage and you said, okay, look, they're giving up at 70%, and maybe it was like a weight loss thing, and you scroll down and this woman says, look, I lost all this weight, and maybe the picture wasn't, didn't reveal that she lost all that weight. Well, or maybe she lost too much weight in the picture. I don't know. I feel like I'm going down a road that maybe I shouldn't. And but then you would know, okay, maybe the picture is the problem, right? So it's kind of a way to see what's going on. Now you have great tools out there like Hotjar and some other ones where you can track people's usage on it. And really what they're doing is almost the same thing as utilizing something like this, like programming into Google Tag Manager what to do. So tags tell Google what to do. So the tags are sort of, if you will, boxes or pieces of content that you can put in there. So like the Facebook pixel, the analytics, is a good one. But any of those things where you can sort of copy and paste them, they all reside in tags. Triggers are when. So when the page loads, when someone clicks, when someone does something. So that's a trigger. That one's pretty easy. Then there's variables. So variables are the information you need to get the job done. So variables are in Google Tag Manager. A lot of them are automatic. So that's the one that hangs me up a lot. I look at variables and I'm like, I don't understand. It says I can use regex, whatever that means, and I do know what that means, but it's the one that throws me off a bit. But variable is really like the ID. So let's say you wanted to install Google Analytics through Google Tag Manager. All right, so you'd fire it up. You'd say, I want a tag, and since since Analytics is already part of the system, you just would select a tag of Analytics. Then you'd say, okay, when do I want to fire it? Well, I want to fire it whenever there's a page view. I need the Analytics to know what's going on in the page view. So that's what that'd be your trigger. Well, then the variable would say, what's the user account that you're actually wanting to attach this page view to? Well, then you would select the user account that you want to do that to, or the ID. And then it has other ones that you can select. Now, on something like Analytics, it's pretty straightforward and it's pretty automatic. But if you wanted to go in depth, you could actually track certain page views from certain, like if you ever had I want to know about people who visit a certain page, what they actually do, and how much do they read? Are they scrolling through each page? So let's say you had an article on, really in-depth article, and you wanted to know if the person that read all of that article, let's say I got a financial planner client, and so let's say he's got, the 10 ways to retire. If you're wanting to retire in the next 10 years, here's 10 things you must do, right? And so they read all of that. And so he says, okay, every person who reads all of that, I want to see what they do next. And I want to see how much they read. So you could go into really depth into that level if you wanted to on Google Tag Manager. Now, again, I'm not going to talk about how to do that, but it's useful for you to know that's really the power of it. But it could also just be something really simple. Like I said at the beginning, someone that has a small business and wants to have a Facebook pixel and wants to have the Hotjar thing and wants to have schema markup so they can have stars on their reviews. And you can listen to a past episode to talk about that. In fact, we talked about how to get stars in the review. And so you could put all that stuff in there, and so you just have a place to go. And so instead of having to touch your website code all the time, you could go into Google Tag Manager and install it there. In fact, they have a tag that's just labeled like HTML, and you can just drop all the stuff in there for that. So there's a few other elements of Google Tag Manager that's worth mentioning. One is called workspaces. Don't let this throw you off. Workspaces, you remember one thing to remember, and if you listen this long, then I appreciate it. But if you have a Google Tag Manager and GTM, so you set GTM up and you're like, oh, it's not working. I don't know why it's not working. Well, you have to publish it because they have workspaces. And what workspaces does is allow you to have your own personal workspace. And what that does is allows GTM basically to have different instances that are going on, so that if multiple people are working, you have sort of a backup, if you will, or you have, let's say you had a developer and a marketer. Let's say you're a small business and you've outsourced the development of your website and you outsourced the marketing of your website, and they're not the same company, but they share a GTM account. Then they would have different workspaces so they don't delete each other's work, and that's really the best way to look at it. If you're a small business owner, chances are you may only need one workspace, but it's the best practice to give that workspace to other people if you're going to let other people touch your site. So that's a thing. And the other thing is folders. And so if you have a large e-commerce site and you want to get really in depth with different things, like did someone click on this? Did someone highlight this? Are they scrolling? Folders are really good for that because you can put then you can sort. Let's say you have 100 different thank you pages and you want to track all of those. Well, you can do that better with folders than you could if you just had them all listed out. So just be that would be what that's for. So just kind of a recap of what Google Tag Manager is. Again, it's kind of a window into your website that also has a controlling piece of it that lets you do a lot of different things in there. But like I said, for the most applicable thing for a business owner would be that again, if you don't want to have to open up your website and mess with the header over and over and over again, then you can actually just install Google Tag Manager and then install everything there. A really cool tip, this is a bonus tip for anyone who's listened this long, is and we're not going to get into how to do it, but I just want to give you sort of the concept of it. So in schema markup, there is structured data tells Google a little bit more about what the information is on the page, and it helps it rank, right? And it's sort of nerdy, but when you see it, it's really not much more difficult than, say, HTML. And basically it says, let's say, for instance, you had I was going to say like a DVD store, but those don't exist anymore. But you had an e-commerce site and it had products on it, and you wanted to label each product and what kind of brand it was and all of that. So you can do that with schema markup code. But the problem is that let's say you had 1,000 pages, it's going to be really tedious to do that. So what you could do is actually create a tag, put the schema markup in there, and then also add some JavaScript to it to tell it that when this page loads, I want you to grab the title tag, the brand, all these locations, right? So where the brand is, the size, all that stuff, and I want you to input it into the schema markup code before we load. Now, this all happens so fast that by the time it loads, that Google would see that there is that this has been filled out. So that's one way that you could use Google Tag Manager, in a sense that as the page is loading, grab that. The other thing you're going to notice if you get into Google Tag Manager, you're going to hear something called the data layer. A lot of tutorials and things mention the data layer. All right, so really, really quick version of this. A data layer for my purposes is the layer, like as the page is loading and what's going on your browser, that's basically the data layer. So there's this layer of information that's being collected, and you can actually view it in the what's it called, the developer tools in the browser. You can view it there, but you can see what kind of information is being collected. So the information that Google Tag Manager is being collected is called the data layer. So it's not like and when people talk about this, it's almost like when they talk about DOM, which is really just what's happening on your web page and what's your web browser, right? So if you ever hear, oh, we need to do something with the DOM, well, that's because it's basically what's the browser. So you don't have to be a coder to do this. So anyway, I hope you listen to this. I almost went down a rabbit trail with this somewhat nerdy information, but basically Google Tag Manager is really useful. I really think that business owners, particularly those people who are managing their own websites or smaller sort of marketing firms like I was, should be using Google Tag Manager instead of installing analytics and other things sort of in the raw, if you will, just sort of copying and pasting it into the head. I like Google Tag Manager a lot better for this because, one, it makes life easy. I can just insert it in there. I have it all in one spot. And then also it gives me the opportunity to grow or get more detailed information if I want to in the future. And like I said, it makes implementation of anything that goes into the head so much better. So hopefully you enjoyed this. I really wanted to cover this because, frankly, for me, it was a little hard. One area I was really weak in is understanding Google Tag Manager. And I thought, how this could be useful for someone if they understood what it was. And so, again, it's a little piece of code, opens up a window. The tags tell it what to do. So like what program to use or what thing to implement. The trigger tells it when to do it. And the variables tell it where to basically store that information. So anyway, I hope this was helpful. And if you have any requests for different things for me to cover as far as digital marketing, implementations, things like that, feel free to email me at joshua@fordmarketing.com. That's number 4, rdmarketing.com. Would love to hear from you. If you have questions, anything like that, I may have already said that, but you can email me. And like I said last time, I am really enjoying seeing these different countries pop up and would love to hear from you if you're from another country and you've liked this podcast. That's it for me today. So tune in next week for another great episode. I've got some content prepared, and as I'm learning new things and as I'm doing some new things with this agency and helping businesses in a different way, I plan to cover some of those things. One, it helps me learn. So that's kind of my non-altruistic purpose of the podcast, is sort of to learn by teaching you. But the other part of it is just to bring you information that I would have never even thought of if I hadn't had some of these clients. So anyway, looking forward to finishing out this year with some great podcasts, and look forward to seeing you next week, or maybe talking at you next week. So anyway, thanks so much for listening, and make it a great day.